Good afternoon, everyone. This is Samantha Diavatis speaking. Thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure having you all. I'm very excited actually to have Julian Ford here with us today. Just a little background on Julian. She's been using NeurOptimal. She purchased her first system 3 years ago. She's from Burbank, California. She's one of our moderators on the past forums. She's currently moderating the research forum as well as the Miracle Client Stories forum. And this presentation that you're seeing today, she presented at our last research conference, and she's also currently working on a case study that she can present on in 2016. So we're very excited about that. Just in terms of questions, as you think of them throughout the webinar, please do type them in the questions or chat box. We will see them, but type them in as you think of them, then that way you won't forget at the end, and we will get to them at the end of the presentation. So, hi, Jules.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us today and for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
It's a great presentation. I love this presentation. So everyone sit tight and put your listening ears on.
Thank you very much.
I'll mute myself now.
Okay, that sounds great. Again, thanks very much, Sam, for that very kind introduction, and also shout out to Liddy. Thank you for arranging this. Hello, friends. Good morning, early afternoon, wherever you are, whatever the time is. As Sam said, I'm Jules Ford. Julian is my real name, my trouble name, as my mom would put it. Julian Ford, you get over here right now. Jules is what all my friends call me, so I hope you call me Jules as well. I am so happy to be presenting this webinar to you today. Before we begin, I want to take you back a bit to when I first presented this presentation at the research conference last February, 2014. At this point, I had only had my practice up and running for 11 months. I felt just about as new as any newbie could ever feel. And I came to this event and I was surrounded by all the friendly faces that I'd come to know and appreciate from the past forums. I felt like I had known these people for ages, because when you're reading along in the past forum and you see that smiling face looking at you, you do kind of develop this camaraderie with them. But at the same time, it was kind of like being a kid at the red carpet. Ooh, there's that celebrity, that kind of sort of way. And as I sat there at this wonderful conference waiting for my turn to speak, I heard the most amazing research. Daniel Wagner from France spoke about using NeurOptimal with Alzheimer's and dementia clients in his practice. Linda Beckett and Janet McCullough in Kingston, Canada presented this huge study on decreasing depression symptoms using NeurOptimal. Joan Marie Larton and her son and his fiance presented the amazing results that Brian had training with NeurOptimal after a motorcycle accident that could have ended in death, probably should have ended in death without the NeurOptimal there to serve as an amazing intervention for him. And Lisa Long presented a very moving testimony about her work with this 30-month-old girl born with a rare chromosomal disorder. There were so many presenters presenting on topics from family systems to addiction to sleep and pain management. These people were rock stars with big research. And here I was, the newbie's newbie, ready to present this following presentation. So I prefaced my presentation back then, as I will now, with the notion that this that I'm about to show you is a pastry, a delicious and light dish to be enjoyed. It's certainly not going to be showing up in any peer-reviewed journal anytime soon, but nonetheless, it's a good bit of research, and the study was worth doing, and it bears repeating if there's anyone out there who's interested in doing further research on the topic and wants to go deeper into it. So, as Sam said, I want you to go ahead and feel free to type in questions as they come up to you in that little chat box off to the side. I probably won't get to questions until the end, because this is kind of a little narrative sort of thing. But rest assured that we will get to them and cover those at the end. So, without further ado, I will present to you what I presented at the research conference in February 2014. So, you might be wondering how a woman with a background in communication studies came to be a presenter at a conference in Neurofeedback and later a webinar host. Well, for me, it has been a bit of a journey. I came to neurofeedback, as many of us do, because of a very enlightening experience with a family member who was using neurofeedback. When my youngest son, Harry, this little fellow right here, was in first grade, his teacher told us at his first parent-teacher conference that she thought Harry was very definitely ADHD. Her own grown sons were ADHD, she told us, and she would have given anything to have been told this early that they were too. She wouldn't be able to live with herself if she didn't let us know that she saw in our son exactly what went on with her own. Now, Harry has always been a handful. I will grant you that. This kid loves the limelight. But I was kind of shocked by her non-medically provided diagnosis. I told her that I really appreciated her opinion, but you can bet at that point I really didn't. And I told her I would follow up with our doctor. But just so she knew ahead of time, whatever came from any diagnosis, we would not be medicating our son unless we had exhausted all other possibilities. She assured me that today's ADHD drugs were amazing and kids don't turn into zombies anymore. I told her I would take it under consideration. Well, I had Harry diagnosed for real by our physician and began obsessively researching non-medication routes. Soon I found ADD, the 20-Hour Solution by Mark Steinberg and Siegfried Othmer, and then I read A Symphony in the Brain by Jim Robbins, and I realized that neurofeedback would definitely be something I was absolutely willing to try. I found John Meckrith at the Balanced Brain in Studio City, California, and I brought my son in for training. John trained with the Othmers, and he uses their system, not NeurOptimal, but the changes began coming fast and furious for Harry's brain. In just 10 sessions, he was noticeably calmer, and he would come home from work and take out that homework and do it without even being asked to do so. By 20 sessions in, he was starting to shine academically, and he was showing us his natural math talent by easily solving tricky questions that we'd ask him right in his head. By 30 sessions in, he was getting in far less trouble at school. By 40 sessions, John said Harry would be fine to go on without any further training. Now, Harry's transformation was so astonishing, I knew I wanted to try this for myself. As a mom with 3 sons under the age of 12 and a husband who often travels for work in the film industry, or even if he's working at home, he's working very long hours, I had serious anger issues and stress issues, and my concentration was shot from lack of sleep. I also knew my husband could use training to gain better focus for his work and his kung fu. My eldest son had dealt with depression and mood swings due to the hormonal shifts as he was heading through puberty, and my middle son had suffered debilitating acute migraines for years. Most importantly, I wondered whether Harry might continue improving if he just kept training. Now, from all that I had read in these books, I knew neurofeedback would help all of us. Having made a substantial investment for Harry's training, I knew I'd have to do the same for anyone else in the family. So I thought about seeing whether I might get a more cost-effective solution. I looked into what it would take to become a provider by going to the BCIA site and the ISNR site, and I became crestfallen. To enter their hallowed halls, I would need an MS in a medically related field. Now, my master's work was in communication studies. I didn't want to have to return to school to get another degree for the privilege of learning how to put sensors on someone. Now, I know there's more to the diagnose and push models than that, but I sincerely doubted it really required 2 additional years of school to get to the point to be ready to learn their methods. The exclusivity frustrated me. I contacted ISNR directly to see if there wasn't a workaround, and they said I could attend if I was working under the direct supervision of a licensed clinical professional, psychiatrist or psychologist or masters of social work, etc. Honestly, I didn't want to be beholden to anyone, so I felt a little hopeless, and I spoke to Harry's trainer, John, about it. John told me he was glad he was grandfathered in when the only requirement was a BA. He assured me there was no rocket science about this, and he also said he'd always been very intrigued about the agnostic NeurOptimal system and Val's very spirited discussions regarding it on several message boards. He said he would love to do it himself, but he wasn't in the right spot financially to chuck all that he had invested so far and start up a new system. I was intrigued, so I went to the Zengar site and I checked it out, and instantly I knew this was the system for us. I was ready to click that button to purchase the home trainer to take care of my family's issues, but my husband insisted that we had the funds available and this could be a game changer, so why not just get a professional? Folks, it was a game changer. The differences I saw in myself after I trained myself for less than 2 months made me realize I really wanted to practice this modality professionally. In my home office, I trained my entire family, and everyone's issues soon decreased dramatically or completely dropped away. I would then train any friend, anyone who looked remotely interested before I went full Monty and I started my own office practice March 15th, 2013. Now in February, before I opened my practice, and while I was getting all my ducks in a row to do so, my eldest son, Max, then a 7th grader, came to me with a proposition. His science fair was coming up in April, and since it was his last turn doing science fairs in middle school, he wanted to win it this year. He knew, based on our family's extremely positive responses to training, that neurofeedback would help students do better in school. Wouldn't that be a great project, Mom? He asked me. I told him I thought it would be an awesome project, and I was certainly game for training kids. And while he would be doing all the data collection and analysis, honestly, I thought there was no way his teacher would go for it, since that would require my participation as a trainer. Now, you all know how easy it is to accurately set sensors correctly, but I thought it might be pushing it pretty hard to have a 12-year-old putting sensors and running sessions on his peers, but I did encourage him to ask. By all means, ask. The worst Mr. Curry would say is no. But Max came home with a big grin that day. Not only had the teacher agreed, he helped Max figure out how best to run the study. So it was going to break down like this. 18 kids would be involved in the study, 9 would be given 5 sessions of NeurOptimal, and 9 would receive no training. Each kid would do a baseline test of attention prior to the first session of NeurOptimal, or if they were in the control group, they would go do one attention test just as their baseline. Now, the attention test we used was Lumosity.com's Lost in Migration. The test still exists on Lumosity's site, but it looks a lot different now. Lost in Migration is a simple 45-second test where the participants look at a grouping of birds and then quickly focus just on that middle bird, pressing the arrow key that corresponds to the direction the bird's flying. Now, at the time we did the research, the test measured both the average reaction time in milliseconds that it took for a participant to identify that middle bird, and it also recorded the overall accuracy of choices made. After the baseline was established, the NeurOptimal trainees followed each of their training sessions with another game of Lost in Migration, and the results were recorded. The non-neurofeedback group, were given follow-up tests at similar intervals. So, any person who does a task repeatedly is going to improve over time. The study was to prove that those individuals doing neurofeedback would improve significantly more than their peers who didn't train. Now, the study design was approved, the trainer was secured, the attention test was always at the ready, and the participant permission slips were signed and returned. The trick was getting 9, 12, and 13-year-olds to show up for their training sessions. After all, they liked their friend well enough, but hey, what the heck is neurofeedback? And you want to put wires where? Is there electricity going in me? Do I have to listen to this weird music? Once I allayed their fears and I assured them that for this test, they would have to listen to this music, but they would be allowed to do most anything they wanted to simultaneously, they were all very interested in seeing what brain training might do for them. Now, the standard line at Zengar is, when in doubt, default it out. But in dealing with these teens, I wanted to offer just a little bit more flexibility to ensure that they would be compelled to complete all 5 of their sessions. Using Jeff Bova's amazing default music and the amazing default settings on NeurOptimal, I allowed them complete freedom to do whatever they pleased in the chair as long as their earbuds stayed in. So, what did I see? One kid did these elaborate superhero drawings. 2 kids brought in Rubik's Cubes of many types and solved them repeatedly, attempting to improve their solve times. I watched kids texting their friends and temple running on their cell phones. Many read books or studied throughout their sessions. 2 teens brought in their laptops, one to write an exhaustive report on Beethoven and the other played Minecraft for all 5 of his sessions. The best thing about allowing them this kind of freedom was that by the end of their sessions, I saw calm teens who, by and large, said, "Oh, it's over?" So, who were these study participants? Well, of the 18 study participants, 16 were males and 2 were females because Max was 12 and girls are totally scary to talk to. So we had 16 guys and 2 completely non-threatening girls. Each of the kids was a high average to gifted student. All of them achieved B's or better in school. We had 1 high-functioning Asperger's boy in the test group, and the others had no diagnoses shared on their permission slips. Now, all but the boy with Asperger's showed very traditional-looking offline analyses, though in every session it clearly showed a very good hookup. I simply could not read this guy's offline analyses at all, though he might have kids training immediately before and directly after him with 0 interference. When he trained, it read as though the room was filled with 60 hertz. I concluded his head was just noisy. In frustration, I went to the past forums to question whether a person could just have a noisy head. And Val commented that more likely he had many micro movements and his facial musculature going on, and that the muscle movement provided the interference. Now, given that the student had regular facial tics and excess winking and blinking, I believe Val's explanation was spot on. Now, before training began, each participant in the study, again, did that Lumosity game, Lost in Migration, just once to set their baseline. And after each session, they would do it again. None of the participants were normal Lumosity users, and none of them did the test at any time other than during the course of the study. And as you can see, in this graph, it became apparent very quickly that the kids doing the training were really improving their scores, making dramatic decreases in processing response time in the game after each session. The control group, on the other hand, had this sort of flatliner effect, as you can see here. As was expected, all of the study participants did improve from their baseline to their final, but whereas every person in the test group realized a substantial double-digit percentage decrease in reaction time necessary to identify those birds, just 3 of the 9 control group participants made it out of the single digits. 1 control group participant didn't even make a single-digit decrease overall. Now, in the end, the average decrease in reaction time for neurofeedback recipients was 27.39%. The best improvement was almost 41%, and the least improved still decreased his reaction time nearly 19%. The average decrease in reaction time for the control group subjects was 8.61%, with the best recorded improvement of just over 19%. And again, that least improved didn't even make it into a percent. Students were told when they took this test to be as accurate as they could when they were spotting those birds. By the end of the study, 8 of the 9 neurofeedback subjects had 100% accuracy, and the 9th had 98% accuracy. By contrast, just 3 of the 9 participants in the control group posted over 95% accuracy. Now, I'm not a scientist, and I'm not a statistician by trade, but these numbers kind of bowled me over. Reaction times for study participants in the neurofeedback test group improved over 3 times as much as did their control group peers. Accuracy for the test group improved on average in excess of 2 times more than it did for the control group. Now, that's as far as the data was taken in terms of statistical analysis. It was, after all, just a junior high school research project. Statistical significance determinations will have to be made by a far more data-savvy person than the 12-year-old boy who gathered it, or his mother who nearly tore her hair out when she took her required statistics class in grad school almost 20 years ago. Max concluded, neurofeedback truly was an aid in improving attention as it's recorded in this game and its measures of response time and accuracy. Now, separate of the study, I concluded for my practice with NeurOptimal that it really works regardless of what people do in their sessions. Except for the sessions that I had run on my own children prior to undertaking this study, my training experience had been mainly with adults. And adults just tend to be fine with listening to music and meditating, or some might talk or fall lightly asleep during sessions, but by and large, they just stay on task. My children usually watch movies when they're in session, so I knew that training with movies was effective too. This study showed me that the results of neurofeedback training easily cut through reading and computer games and generally phone-distracted preteen and teen minds. The participants just had to hear the feedback. That's enough. I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that training while doing other things is optimal, but if it means the difference between getting a petulant teen to come in, it's good to know that they can train and do a desired activity at the same time and still achieve great benefits from NeurOptimal. I love sneaking sessions on my own kids ninja style now. While they read or play computer games or draw or fold origami, I know that whatever they're doing, they're still getting quality training time. Now, I had also heard and seen going into my practice that it's a good policy to make sure that cell phones are turned off so they don't cause any electrical interference in the room. This was not my experience at all in the study. NeurOptimal worked without showing any 60 hertz interference, though the laptops and the cell phones these kids were using in their sessions were less than 2 feet from the amplifier in the computer. I have a teeny tiny office. With the exception of my one noisy-headed kid who, oddly enough, never had a device on him, my system showed 0 electrical interference in all of the offline analyses. Now, I think most of the amazing results of Max's neurofeedback projects were the non-data participant-reported results that came from the kids doing the sessions. Again, none of these participants had any expectations going into this because none of them even knew what neurofeedback was. Most of them were just doing this as a favor to my son. As he got up to present his report to the class, Max asked whether any of the participants wanted to tell the class a little bit about what they had experienced. He thought they were going to talk about being hooked into a machine and listening to music, but instead they blew his mind. The track star reported far faster track times, and shortly after his sessions, he set a school record in the weekly run, smashing a 5-year-old record by a full 2 laps. A tuba player reported a far easier time comprehending the algebra that had been vexing him all semester. One kid who had been out sick for an entire semester reported fewer headaches and a far easier time sleeping. Others reported better reading comprehension and speed, better focus in class, getting along a lot better with family members. Now, these real-life changes are what NeurOptimal is all about. In only 5 sessions, each kid who trained with NeurOptimal had a concrete change for the better in his or her life. Max told me when he brought up the idea of doing this study that he was in it to win it. And win it he did. He took home the award for Outstanding Experimental Design at his science fair. He was thrilled beyond words, which is saying a lot for a kid who loves to talk so much we call him the professor. Unfortunately, our school doesn't participate in any fairs beyond its own hallways, so that's where the study ends, almost. See, at the end of the year, each of the grades has an awards assembly for congratulating students who are top academic achievers. Max brought home an unexpected but very significant award from his science teacher that day, the Best Science Fair Project Award, for having one of the best science fair projects in this history of Luther Burbank Middle School. I'm pretty sure he rode his bike home on a cloud of exuberance that day. So, where do we go from here? Now, my purpose in telling you this story is obviously to share a cool study, but it's also very much a call out to the newbies. I still think of myself as a newbie. I bought my NeurOptimal in September 2012, and I trained anyone who would sit still for 10 sessions for free before I opened up my practice. If people had really compelling symptoms, I would give them 20 free sessions. See, every time you give free training for a good purpose, you may be making substantial impacts that you can't immediately realize. The sessions that you give away give you experience, and that makes you a better trainer in the long run. Taking on an experiment like this seemed insane when I started, but I hope you can see it was far from crazy. Did I get a bunch of business from it? No, I got exactly 0 business from it. But I made at least 10 kids' lives better for having done the study, and that is a great thing. My biggest payoff was from witnessing these kids in their sessions. It gave me an enormous wealth of information to draw upon as I began taking clients in my office. I now know for certain it's okay for people to read when they train. I have proof. If I have a client who really feels he needs that cell phone on, I know it's not ideal, but if he must, then by all means, I let him have it on because I know it's not going to interfere. Now, business might not come beating down your door right off the bat, newbies, but put your website up and start making connections and business will come. Think outside the box when you start your practice and don't shy away from an office sharing part-time setup as you begin. In Los Angeles, where I live, mental health professionals are a bit nomadic and they tend to operate out of multiple offices. I was able to start my business in an excellent neighborhood, chock full of mental health professionals for a fraction of what I would have had to lay out for my own 24/7 space. And as my practice has grown, my hours have expanded to meet the demand. Craigslist is your friend. Check out office space and look in those part-time listings. And newbies, that's also such a help as you begin to fully utilize the amazing resources PASS has as you start your practice. The forums are an amazing place to get information from trainers who have been there and done that with people dealing with any symptom that comes walking into your office. It's nearly impossible to stump them. If you have a person with a symptom, go to the PASS forum, pull up the search function, put in the symptom, and you'll see it's been discussed before. Take that knowledge, use it, gird yourself with it. The PASS webinars are invaluable. Listen to all of them once or twice. Vowels might take you 5 times before you really get them, but it's so worthwhile. These webinars greatly increase the depth of your understanding of NeurOptimal. And above all, newbies, oldies, allbees, train yourself regularly. Keep training to realize enormous benefits for yourself. It makes you a more credible trainer when you continue training. I love the reaction I see when clients ask me if I do this on myself. I tell them absolutely, and I don't ever intend on stopping. For anyone wondering where the count is since the research conference, I've now had over 225 sessions. And yes, to borrow and twist that line from Charlton Heston, you can have my NeurOptimal when you pry it from my cold, dead hands. It is my 33-minute vacation, and my life is so much better for taking it. Think about it. If you're a client and you ask whether a potential trainer trains and they said, I should, but I rarely do, that trainer is admitting that there's not enough of a benefit to do it, so they don't take that time. Take the time. In the beginning, you'll probably have a lot of it, so use it, right? I also offer this as an encouragement to all the folks who here, like me, don't have alphabet soup after their names. Psychologists and psychiatrists and other therapists might just have an in when they add NeurOptimal to an existing practice, but you don't need to have a medical pedigree to be an amazingly effective trainer thanks to the expertise built into NeurOptimal. I make it clear to my clients, I am not a doctor from the minute they contact me. My educational history is in communications. If they ask me advice, I make it clear to them I am not a therapist. And any advice I give them would be like advice from a neighbor or a friend who is not a therapist. I let them know I won't offer medical diagnoses or prescribe any medications, but I'm more than happy to help guide them to optimal brain health as they train with NeurOptimal. See, to me, the only 4 prescriptions that every brain needs are to eat nutritious foods, get plenty of good exercise, adequate sleep, and train that brain with NeurOptimal. And for my clients, that's enough. Now, finally, I offer this up as a what if in a hopeful step in the evolution of neurofeedback availability. I think back to when I was in 7th grade, where my son was when he started this study. At that time, my family got a home computer. Now, that was unique. This was the dark ages, folks. Before we got one, the only kid I knew with a computer in her house was the daughter of a computer science professor. Back then, there were 6 boxy, ugly Commodore computers that kids could use to make a simple program to generate a random number between 1 and 10 at our junior high school. The high tech was staggering. As I got into high school, there was a computer room with a dozen Macs in it. By college, there were computer labs at different places on campus with Apple computers in them. And now you'd be hard-pressed to find any middle-class family without at least one computer in the house. Junior high computer labs right now look like amphitheaters of technology with huge screened, amazingly powerful machines in force. And if you add in the computer functionality of tablets and cell phones, I bet that every person in America is either a computer owner or just a public library away from a computerized device. I would like to hope that this computer accessibility model that happened in my lifetime might someday work for NeurOptimal accessibility in my son's life as he grows to be my age. You see, it starts with a few NeurOptimal trainers taking their systems into schools for a few at-risk kids. And once schools see the huge beneficial impact it makes, maybe this branches out to a NeurOptimal lab. So by high school, kids can drop in on a free period and train their brains. What if instead of sending kids to detention, we sent them to train their brains to help alleviate the issues that cause them to act out? What if, by adulthood, everyone was 1 degree of separation or less from neurofeedback? How much calmer and more pleasant would it be if anyone could train in their homes just as easily as they can currently pull up Facebook? Now, in a world demanding double-blind studies with hundreds of participants, I know that this little science fair experiment that I presented you today is not going to make any more impact than a drop of water does in the ocean. But I do hope and believe that all experiments bringing more positive attention to neurofeedback help to add to a wave of studies that further push this field into the public's consciousness, changing the preconception of neurofeedback as a purely experimental intervention or some woo-woo 70s dalliance to show it instead as a healthy and effective alternative to drugging symptoms is good science for all of us. Now, that is where the original presentation ended. But with the extra year and change of experience under my belt, I'm going to take this a step further. I want to encourage all of you to think very hard about launching a study of your own using NeurOptimal. As the forum moderator for the past research forum, perhaps you saw the double dog dare I posted last week. Maybe you didn't, so I'll just put it up right here. It's like this. Regardless of your level of experience, regardless of your educational pedigree, you have in your hands a great tool for showing the world how to train through symptoms to get to a healthier end. We're not finding cures. We're not promising the end of all medications, but rather we're using the innate power and wisdom of the brain to heal itself. If you have time in your schedule to work in a study, you have time to go for it. If you're not a professional with access to professional tracking tools for the population you're interested in researching, just put a shout out on the research forum. There might be someone there with an idea to help you track your project. If you know a population you want to help, seek out someone in an advocacy organization for that group, and you'll be able to get in touch with others who might be able to help or serve as collaborators. Be open also to those who might approach you. As Sam mentioned, I'm currently working on a case study of my own to see whether NeurOptimal can assist folks struggling with aphasia, that loss of language ability that comes after strokes or traumatic brain injury or brain tumors. Over a year and a half ago, this professor and medical doctor who had worked with stroke patients in the Veterans Administration approached me just to pick my brain to see whether NeurOptimal might help these folks. He planted a seed of curiosity in me that bloomed into this study. See, the more research we do as a community, the more drops we add to that tide of information that's coming and pushing further and further into the public knowledge until someday the scientific community and public have to take notice of this tsunami of proof that whatever the symptom, NeurOptimal helps. And that's, for real, the end of the presentation. Thank you so much for letting me share today. If anyone has any questions, I would love to take them now. Miss Sam?
I'm clapping over here, Jules. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
I loved it the first time I heard it, and I loved it even more the second time.
Bless your bones.
Okay, so I only see one question so far. I saw it was actually posted very early on. When you were talking about how your family had done neurofeedback sessions with the traditional system prior to NeurOptimal. So Christina was asking, were there any negative side effects to this non-NeurOptimal system?
Absolutely. Christina, thank you so much for asking. Love John. He's an amazing trainer. But again, when you're dealing with those diagnose and push models, he uses the Signet system, the Optimer Signet system. You are pushing that brain to perform in a certain way. And there were times when Harry would get done with sessions and a kid would be like, oh, brain drain is so great. Everybody should try brain drain. Oh my God. And there were other times when he would get done and he would fall asleep so deeply on the way home that I would have to shake him to wake him on the way home. It wasn't like crankiness things. It was more just about just those pushed, amplified, or just really, really weary at the end. You know, I'm still really grateful for the time and the money that we invested, but I would like to say with the ADHD kids who come to me, I see progress in them after 20 sessions, the same progress that Harry made after 40. So it, hands down, it's a better instrument than what Harry trained on, but you know, it's what we had access to when he was training.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. So now Janet is asking, Jules, did you seek parental consent for the science project participants?
I did, of course, Janet. Thank you for asking on that. I don't know if I have. I would have to search for it at this point. But yes, any person who wanted to participate in the study period had to sign a parental consent. Had to have a parental consent signed. So that we could cover ourselves. And luckily, it was a really great group of parents too, because, you know, again, there are people, this is still considered experimental to so many people. They've never heard of it before. And, you know, there's just that worry that some people might have. You're going to do something wrong to my kid. But I think after all was said and done, they were all very grateful that they did allow their kids to do this.
Actually, a question that comes to me just stemming from that question was, during the presentation, you said that your son went to his teacher and you thought that maybe the teacher would have some reservations, but he came back very happy that day because he actually got permission and to move ahead with it. How much information did the teacher ask about NeurOptimal or about the neurofeedback? Was he already aware of the technology, or it surprises me that he would have given him permission without sort of knowing enough, I guess, about what he was going to do.
I'm going to go back. That's an excellent question, Sam. I'm going to go back to the idea that we call Max the professor. He is so well informed on things that he likes. He just like focuses in and studies. So he brought with him information about my practice, my flyers and stuff to show the science teacher. But really, I have to say in retrospect that it is kind of interesting that the science teacher never contacted me. Max just must have sold it really well by himself. He never contacted me after the fact. The next year I was serving as a chaperone on a field trip, and the science teacher then approached me to say it blew his mind. But yeah, he never contacted me. He just went along with it. So there you go.
And as far as the permission slips went, was there information about neurofeedback and NeurOptimal on those forms, or was it just we want to borrow your child to do some, was it just a 2-sentence thing, or
the forms themselves? It was about a half page talking about NeurOptimal and the process of neurofeedback, and then plus each of them got a flyer about what neurofeedback is from my business, so they knew what was on there. And only one of the mom of the kid who had been out ill for an entire semester called me to pick my brain a little bit more about what it was, just because her kid had been through this massive illness and she just wanted to make sure she wouldn't be tipping it further. But he did great.
That's fantastic. Well, I'd love to see what your flyer says, because it's obviously very well worded.
I don't know. I don't even know if I still have any more of those ones. It's what I think that, for what it's worth, the information that comes out of Zengar, and also there was a link on both the permission form and there's a link in my flyers to Zengar. So if people have further information, you can go to the Zengar site, and you guys are so good about explaining what it is and what's the difference. And
Well, thank you. Okay. So next question, Christina is asking, she says, so you recommend giving away free training for how long? And what about if you need to make an income?
Christina, that is a perfect question. I am in a really privileged place. I do realize that. My husband is our primary breadwinner. And when I first started this, I had a part-time income, a part-time job that was just essentially grocery money. And so I wasn't under a huge feeling of pressure that I had to generate income. But in order to get information into myself and just get the experience, I seriously talked to every mama friend that I have. And, I was in an exercise group too, all those mamas, and I was like, I will give you 10 free sessions. Just come in. And it wasn't for nothing. I told them, I will give you these sessions and I will ask you to give me in return your feedback about how it worked. And so all the little blurbs that they would put on their pre and post forums about how things were going, any comments that they made to me, those actually started to help build out and flesh out my website as endorsements. And some of them would go onto Yelp and put big endorsements after they got done. So it wasn't like I was just saying, here's 10 free. I was saying, I will trade you your feedback for Neurofeedback, and it did work. The reason I chose 10, Christine, was because if you just give a couple away for free, there's not going to be that big of a noticeable change. By the time you've given 5 sessions to a person, they're starting to really see some differences. And by 10, it can be pretty dramatic. Each of those people, I also said if they wanted to continue on, I would give them a friends and family discount for having been my little test monkeys, the test monkey discount, I do believe I called it. And that was 55% off of my normal sessions out here in California. It's, all around the country we have different pricing structures. But so a 55% discount off the normal rate was that's like a copay at their normal doctor, really. So I gave them that opportunity to go forward. Sadly, I will say none of them decided to do that. But some of those people did wind up referring friends over who did wind up becoming paid clients in the end. So
great.
Yeah.
Okay. So Nikki is asking, and I was going to ask you the same thing actually after the presentation, if you would be okay with making this presentation public. So we would post it in past, but if it could also be used publicly.
Is that Nikki Sobchak?
Yeah.
First and foremost, I love you, Nikki. You guys are nuts. I'll do anything to advance NeurOptimal into this world. If you think it would be beneficial and it could be used publicly, please do. Absolutely, please do.
Okay. Wonderful.
Everybody needs to have a NeurOptimal system on their console, by their television at home. Everybody.
I agree with you. It's funny because you were saying that, they'd have to pry it from your fingers at the end of your life. And I feel exactly the same way. And after hearing Joan Marie's presentation on her son that had suffered the motorcycle accident, I actually told my husband that if ever I'm in a coma, my what I would like is for him to come into the hospital with the NeurOptimal system and be running. I just wanted to be clear in case he,
They should have it in the advanced directive. They should have, there's the advanced directive, don't keep me on life support. There's the advanced directive, get the NeurOptimal here ASAP. It should be there. Absolutely.
Well, that's it. I thought it would go without saying, but I just wanted to make it clear to him that those were that's what I wanted.
That was such a stunning presentation and such a stunning comeback for that young man. I was blown away.
Absolutely. And if any of you weren't at the research conference, she did do that webinar as well, so you can search for that.
And there's also that little it was like 5-minute thing on YouTube you can get as well.
Yes. Yeah. There's a new video. I believe it's called Back from the Brink.
Yeah. Beyond the Brink. Yeah. It was great.
That's it. Okay. So Janet is asking, were any of the kids in the study actually diagnosed with ADHD? Because you mentioned above average.
None of them disclosed that. We didn't ask for them to disclose any troubles that they might be having. I just knew because the Asperger's child is a friend of the family and they've been struggling with that was his diagnosis. So we didn't ask anyone to disclose any medical anything on those forms. We just wanted them to say, yep, I'll come in. Please show up for your appointment. Please show up.
And was it 9 of them signed on and all 9 of them showed up for their appointments, or did you have more sign on but some of them dropped off? Or
no, it was kind of interesting. I thought, I would have thought that 10 and 10 would have been a nice little roundy kind of situation, but no, the study design was 9 and 9, so every person who signed on did go through with it.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
That's
but it was to the wire. I got to tell you, it like the Friday, the presentation was to be made on Monday, and the Friday before, the last girl blew off her final appointment, and so we got her in on Sunday, and Max was smashing numbers for her, so he could present on Monday. Whoa!
Yeah. Okay. And I also actually, when you were saying all the things that they were doing during their sessions, I do the exact same thing with my son. If I'll sneak in it while he's doing his homework, I'll sneak in a session on him. If he's just sitting there quietly reading, I'll just kind of sneak the sensors on him and throw the headphones on, and we'll do the same thing in our practice. We do see a lot of children. Most of the time we'll have them watch movies, but if they don't feel like doing that, we have coloring books there. A lot of them use their phone too, anything like that. Anything that'll keep them in the chair is
absolutely.
Yeah.
I haven't found the thing that interferes yet. And it cuts through. It's so strong. It just cuts through whatever distraction is going on there. As long as they can hear those interruptions, that's all that matters.
Exactly. And you don't even have to hear the interruptions. You just need to be able to hear the music.
Right,
exactly. A lot of the interruptions are, So Nikki is asking, how frequent were the sessions?
For the kids in the study?
Yes.
Again, it was kind of catch as catch can. Some of the kids were really good about doing it a couple of times a week, and so we would get them through in less than 3 weeks, like 2.5 weeks. And then there was the girl whose schedule could not be kept, and it took her the full it took her the full 5 weeks to get through. So we're only dealing with 5 sessions. The kids who did the neurofeedback kids did their first initial baseline session before their first NeurOptimal session. So they were actually in the same day that they did their baseline, and then right after the session, they did that second one. So, yeah.
Okay. Perfect. I have Christina actually saying that, she says, I have Back from the Brink on my website. I had TBI and PTSD from a motorcycle accident years ago, and the training has helped the symptoms tremendously.
Great.
As for income, I secured a summer job to get me through this period of establishing my practice.
Right.
And she's mobile. Yeah.
So, she's doing mobile?
That's what she says. Yeah. She says her practice, which is in San Clemente, but I am mobile. I'm going to be working with a DC and holistic practitioner 2 days a week.
That's great. I keep hoping, because I live in La La Land, where there's a bunch of, there's that whole celebrity kind of thing that and there's just a lot of wealth out here. I keep hoping that that if I put it out there, somebody's going to start taking me up on the notion that I will come to you, whether it's a studio hiring me to come and train kids on their set or something like that, because I do have that on my site. Because I am first and foremost a mother, and I have 3 boys who are now 15, 13, and 10, they still need me. And so I'm only a part-time practitioner. I only work Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and half a day on Saturday. But I do keep those Tuesday, Thursdays open thinking, come on, I'll come to you. I got the equipment, can go. But, I'm in it for the ride. I'm, again, extremely blessed in that I don't feel the wolf beating at my door, so I can just enjoy the process of having this build naturally by word of mouth. I don't advertise really other than my website. And so far, so good.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions. So if you do have one, please do type it in. Now's the time.
Oh, I finally figured out, Sam, how to open up the question box. I was looking at the chat box. I'm like, where are you? I can't even see.
Maybe I should have told you how to do that.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I should be a little bit more computer savvy.
Okay, so Janet's saying, great job, Jules. Thank you. Nikki says she loves you back.
Aww.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you, Jules, for doing this. It's a fantastic presentation. I want to thank everyone for joining us and for the great questions at the end. And, keep posting on Pass, people. It's really, really nice to just have that sense of community and be speaking to one another. And if you don't have a picture up on Pass yet, please put one up so we can see your smiling face. Like Jules said.
Because, right, when you get to the seminars, it's like, wow, I know that person. And it's just instantly, it's an icebreaker. Oh, I remember your face from Pass.
It is 100%. And actually, someone told me once that even in terms of getting referrals, if your picture's up on Pass, and if you have in your little signature line, where you're from, if someone asks me, do you have a train, or ask anyone, do you know anyone in X, Y, or Z? If they kind of remember, oh yeah, so-and-so is from X, Y, or Z, and they've kind of seen your face and they recognize you and stuff, they'll be more prone to sending you that person than somebody whose picture they haven't seen. So it's a psychological thing.
We love that.
That's it. Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of the day, everyone. And we'll see you at the next webinar.
Sounds great. Thank you, Sam.
Okay. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.